Greetings and salutations, fine shits of the universe, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to the sideline, guys. And I have the pleasure of being joined by this absolute cretin of a human being, my guy, Sean Negron. I appreciate having you here again for another season of the MMA edition of the sideline, guys. How does it feel to be back, Sean?
It feels like being a winner. You know, when you're a winner and you absolutely sweep 2024 and you basically sweep 2023, you kind of let him have one just so you can get that confidence up. You know, you get into 2025 comfortable. You know, you had an easy 2024. You realize that this guy calls himself the guru. He goes around town saying he's the guru of MMA. And I think you just got to come in and, humble him. And that's, I feel like, what I did here today, and I've done here all year. And now that we're in 2025, I look forward to doing this again. And I feel like my efforts should be rewarded. You know, I didn't get a trophy, and I feel like for winning 3 out of 4 so far in the show, there should be some sort of like gold or sapphire, some sort of trophy that heads my way. What do you think?
So I just want to start off the top by just making it so clear how this is a pattern now, right? Not just this intro, but across many seasons that you just perpetuate these lies where there's very clearly verifiable facts involved. So first of all, never called myself a guru, right? I'm sure if you can find a clip of me saying this, I mean, there's hours of content of us speaking on the show. If you could find a clip of me calling myself a guru or the MMA guru or a MMA guru or a guru at all. I've never once said that about any of me or my homies, if I'm being real. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you swept me by going 3-1. 3-1 is good. I never denied or shied away from that. But you want to come out here talking about sweeps when you've never swept me in either season. Let's make that very clear. You swept me in categories, but not in the
I
seasons.
swept you in both categories.
No, not
2024, you were swept.
no,
Dude, you,
you
you
didn't
can't
sweep me. No,
change
you did
history.
not. No, you did not.
I beat
You're
you in
just capping,
Dynasty, and
bro.
I beat you in the Pick'ems.
You're just capping.
Sorry, bro.
Just
I'm
capping,
sorry.
bro.
I'm
It's
sorry you
okay.
feel
You
that
went
way.
1-3. You don't got the dynasty totals, but you don't want to look at that. You just want to look at all the categories you won. Clearly, there's animosity here, ladies and gentlemen. Lock in for season 3 so you don't miss a beat of all of this awesome stuff we got going on at OTS. So make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube. You could also find me at Negron MMA on Twitter and TikTok. You could also catch me at Chris Negron_Sean. Why don't you let the people know where they can find you and your bullshit takes? I mean, your awesome takes.
My bullshit takes have led us to victory in 2024. So I don't know. You can talk all that smack. I don't talk smack. All right. I if I talk smack, it leads to victory. All right. That's what I do. But you can find me bsreports.org, where Chris will never make his debut, even though he said he would in 2023. And you can find me there. My email's at the bottom. You can hit me up there. My email's there, and I will help you get started in the sports world. Chris can't do that for you, but I can, and I will. I'm the better Negron, so come to me. That's what we do. Pause.
Yeah, come to that man. Next up, I'm excited to be back and starting a brand new season of the show. Our third full season. It's going to be a great year. I cannot wait to see what happens come the end of the year because I promise you ain't going to hit a fucking end of me because this streak is over, cocksucker. But we have an event to begin our calendar year, January 10th. It took us almost 2 weeks. I started fiending, Sean. I really started itching watching things I've never watched before, right? I was sitting at work today watching the early one championship fights, the straight Lumpini Stadium MMA excuse me, Muay Thai and MMA gloves. This is the kind of degeneracy I'm partaking in now that we have been so absent from MMA, but today we're back. Well, tomorrow we're back with another awesome edition. I lied. This isn't an awesome edition. This fight card sucks. We are at UFC Hellscape 2021 Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas 2. Kind of funny that she has lead billing, even though she is the one who lost the original fight, but obviously a little more well standed at strawweight at this point. We'll get to that fight later, though. Sean, let's kick off the fucking season the only way we know how, with me forcing you to start. How do you feel about the first fight of 2025? Nurullo Aliev, the Tajik Eagle, minus 700 going up against Joe Solecki, plus 530.
That feels good. A champion should go first, and I'm glad that you delegated it to the champion. That's how it should go. But this one, I kind of like it to start. It's first fight back, and I feel, what is it, 4 weeks? 4 weeks since the last UFC card. So to start 2025 off, you get a somewhat of a one-sided fight when you get to the to the betting lines and stuff like that. But I'm picking, what is it, Aliev? Is that what we called him? See, there's no way. If anyone new to the show, real quick, before I say anything, there's no way I'm ever pronouncing names correctly. Don't ever ask me. I've heard them a million times, and I'll never remember it. So just get used to it. It's the first show of 2025. I will never say it correctly. Moving forward, I think both these guys are very even in the striking. I don't see any of them that outweighs the other here. I feel like this one's more of like, in this one, I think this one's going to do wrestling versus grappling in this exchange. I think it's one of those where I think Aliev is a bit of I guess, a smasher, if that's the best way to describe it. When it comes to the ground game, I think he likes to go to quick strikes and deal a lot of damage from the ground. And I think that's just going to be way too much for someone like Solecki, who's coming in. I think this is, what, a week notice or 2 weeks notice for him coming in. This is, it's a hard fight to come in on short notice and have a huge uphill battle in someone like Aliev here. So keeping this as condensed as possible, I think this is too much of an uphill climb for Solecki, for someone like Aliev, who I think will focus so much on the cardio of Joe and force him to the ground and really get the best of him round two.
I love it. Nurullo Aliev looks exactly like Khabib, right? This is the Tajikistan Khabib. I don't think he fights like Khabib or to Khabib's level, but the man resembles him in his face. I'll tell you that. Um, I think this fight is closer than the line suggests, but I also would not be anywhere near picking Joe Solecki, and that's just because at this point of his career, I'm sorry, I'm out on Joe Solecki. I'm a fan of his grappling style. I'm a fan of the things he can do. That's something that I'm a big fan of in MMA in general, right? The ability to see the way these individual athletes perfect their skills and their game and tailor their game to their individual skills. I think that's something that's really cool to watch develop, and the development that I wanted to see in his game, unfortunately never came. And that is one that you spoke about a second ago. It's the wrestling game. I think although he can end up in opportunistic situations where he ends up in top control, a lot of the times he just finds himself behind. And that starts on the feet. So I think Nurullo Aliev could hurt him on the feet if he decided to, stick to it. But I don't think that's going to happen. Um, I'm interested to see how the veteran in this position, Joe Solecki, uh, comes out in this matchup. I feel like if he is aggressive and assertive, it might get him taken down, but it might open more opportunities for him to work his game. Like, I feel like he needs to really put himself in a position to do something that he's never really quite done before or put on tape before, right? If he puts himself out there in this fight, I think those scrambles are more available to him. I think if he's being reserved and on the back foot and trying to be avoidant, he's going to get picked apart like we've seen him get picked apart recently. So I'm picking Nurullo Aliev pretty easily, but I don't think these odds are right, bro. There's a lot of wacky odds on this card, if you ask me, but a lot of fights that don't matter too, so that makes sense. Next up, we move on to the women's flyweight, or is it strawweight? That's a good question. I'm blanking right now. Effort that for me, Sean. Um,
It's strawweight.
the strawweight division, yeah, Fatima Kline made her debut at, what was it? That's why I got confused. Fatima Kline minus 800 going up against Viktoriia Dudakova plus 625. I love that I get this fight because this is the all Sean fight, right? This is the I drafted both of these women and I'm committed to both of these women for 2025. You love to see it. Um, so we're going 1-1 on the board for Sean and Dynasty already. Whenever I see odds like this, especially in women's MMA, I blink twice. I'm not blinking twice at these odds. I was so huge on Fatima Kline that I single-handedly made Sean draft her and get an L. That's how high I was on Fatima Kline. I still am that high on her. I think she is a phenomenal fighter in all phases of the game, which is hard to find in MMA. I think obviously she is more comfortable at range and doing things at range, but I think in every aspect of MMA, she's well versed and have shown that she's competent. And I cannot say the same about Viktoriia Dudakova, right? Although, I mean, you could argue the odds are kind of wide. At the end of the day, I think skills pay the bills, and I think Fatima Kline is clearly the more skilled athlete. I'm excited to see how she looks at 115 because I think she did not look small in her debut, but at the same time, I want to see how she looks at this weight, right? You never you want to see how a fighter looks in the UFC coming off of a loss in general, but now back at her natural weight class, I want to see if she looks big out there, right? That's important. Um, yeah, Viktoriia Dudakova is probably gonna get knocked out, so give me Fatima Kline.
See, with me, I actually think this is the fight I actually felt was a little closer because to me, I think Dudakova is a better striker, and I feel that Fatima is going to try her best, just like in the fight I said earlier, is that this one's going to try to be forced to the ground, and I think Fatima is way better in the ground game than Viktoriia. So I think if Fatima can find a way to feint and go for the double leg, take her down, or even a single leg, whatever, I think that is where Dudakova doesn't find a way back up. I feel like Dudakova has had such a hard time with wrestlers or any type of grappling exchange, and her best attribute is kind of standing and keeping the distance. And I think for me, this is one where I think the odds are a little crazy. Where that if Dudakova lands one or two clean ones per round, you might be able to sneak away with a round win because I do feel like this fight is going to be very slow in the beginning and kind of just mixing and matching, seeing what you have. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dudakova actually steals a round here. But to me, I actually think that it'll be Fatima that drags her down into like the deep waters, and Dudakova won't find a way back up and will eventually just get submitted. So if I had to say, I think Dudakova. I mean, yeah, Dudakova gets submitted round two. Give me Fatima.
I love it. Double Fatima out. I like that we also had a like dissenting opinion in some ways. Like I think although I would definitely agree that Victoria Dudakova does not have a ground game. I'm interested to see how that can affect her game at this weight. Like I think although you're saying she's a better striker, I still think Fatima Klein is going to outstrike her. So I'm interested to see how that one looks. Next up, we got Magomed Gadzhiyasulov minus 255 going up against Bruno Lopes plus 230. I have the pleasure of running out Magomed Gadzhiyasulov. Look at that. You practice these names when the wins matter to you, right? So, very clear. But, um, Sean, why don't you me know how I should be feeling about my dynasty fighter going out there?
Yeah, to me, I think this is actually a close fight. I do, but you know what though, I I stress this now because I think this is going to be such a big key to this fight is leg kick, leg kick, leg kicks. I think Magomed keeping the distance here and forcing the leg kicks on Bruno Silva will just Bruno Silva, Bruno Lopes will just be the ultimate demise of Bruno Lopes. Like I do feel that if I had to stress it, I think Magomed is a little bit of a better striker because he has the ability to really utilize feigning on the leg kicks and going with the overhands. You know, I think he does a really good job of keeping distance and then closing in the distance really quickly and then finding his way back out to really attack the legs. And I really feel for what Bruno Lopez's defense brings that he exposes his legs a little too much. And I think that that's probably going to be in the game plan for Magomed and his team is to really bring the legs, expose the legs to the point where you can now toy with him because he's going to be on the back foot almost the entire duration of the fight. So while these guys are still very new to the UFC and still getting their feet wet when it comes to who they really are and their potential in this type of level of competition, I really do think that this one's more of a simpler way to break it down, where it's just about keeping and controlling distance, attacking the legs, going up high when you see them duck their hands, and going for the kill that way. So it'll be a slower fight, but I think Magomed takes it 30-27.
I love that you went with that wrinkle because it's not often you hear anybody asking for distance strikes and leg kicks, right? But let's be real here. I think Magomed Gadzhiyasulov has something to prove at this stage of his UFC career. I think he is not the prospect that his name suggests. And I say that as someone who's very high on this guy. I think he is someone that can put his skills together when he is assertive. Now, the problem is we're asking for a different game plan here, right? I think Bruno Lopes is somebody who, like you said, is kind of always all in or all out. And I think for Magomed in this one, it's just you got to go out there, in my opinion, and assert your dominance. Although I agree, you could get it easy. However you need a win, you could get your win. That's 100% in MMA. There's 1,000 ways to die. You pick the easiest route. But at the end of the day, I think Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, the more experienced fighter at this stage, should be able to go out there and separate himself and show his skills. So I'm gonna go with Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, but I'm gonna be real. There was a time where I was considering cutting this guy. Like there was a time where I was a little worried, and then when I was doing the tape for this one too, I think this matchup is a little closer than the odds suggest, especially if Bruno Lopes could get in there and land effective shots. But I agree with you. I think Magomed Gadzhiyasulov has the tools and should be able to get it done. I'm going with my guy. Next up, we move on to Ernesta Kareckaite minus 255 going up against Nicolle Caliari plus 225. Sean, we are back in the realm of women's MMA, and this is fun because we got a double whammy, right? We got a double introduction, and I'm excited for this fight because this is one of those fights that I don't care about on this card. This is going to be the moment where I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go use the bathroom. I'm gonna go take some time for myself because I'm not very interested in this fight at all. I'm gonna be very real. Shout out to you, Sean. I think your ideals on women's MMA shine bright on this one. I think a lot of people are hyping up fighters in this matchup, and I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I really don't see it. So I'm gonna keep it short and sweet here. This is gonna be a messy fight, right? Like this is gonna be a scrap. I'll give it that. That I guess it's gonna be fun in that way. But whoever can consistently keep themselves put together at range is gonna win this fight. I assume that person would be Ernesta. So give me Ernesta Kariakatatakai.
Damn it, dude. That's exactly what I was about to say. It's about reach advantage versus massive grappling advantage. That's what it comes down to. I think Ernesta is a way better striker, but I think Nicolle is a way better grappler. So it's going to come down to who fights whose fight. And this one I actually think is close. I was a little surprised that Nicolle is at plus 190 or plus, whatever, plus 225. That I think those odds are a little too much. I actually was like thinking more minus 150, plus 140 range. But to me, I think this one is all about Ernesta keeping her distance at all times. She has a huge reach advantage here. Use it. Constantly keep going forward, but don't let Nicolle get too close. It's literally like the meme. Can't let you get too close. And I think to that, I think it'll be a boring fight, but I still think Ernesta will find a way to win 2 out of 3, maybe even potentially get a knockout in there in round 3. But I think this one is Ernesta's fight to lose, to be completely honest. So I'm picking her.
Shout out to New York because you cannot keep New York quiet. We move on to the short notice replacement fight. We've got Preston Parsons plus 475 going up against Jacobe Smith minus 590. Sean, it's your time to shine. Lead the motherfucking dance. How you feeling?
Damn, I missed that siren, man. That's New York through thick and thin right there. That police siren. But this one is another one. Is gonna be interesting to see how Preston Parsons does against someone like Jacobe Smith here. Honestly, this is like a bully fight. Like I feel like Smith, like this isn't really a striking advantage, but to me, I feel like Smith has such an ability to bully Preston Parsons in this fight to the point where it almost overwhelms him. And this is probably one of the easier fights for me to pick from watching both of their tape. And to me, I just don't think Preston does really well when he's retreating. And I think Jacobe does really well of just smothering you. Either stand up or going for any sort of dragging guys to the ground. I look at Jacobe Smith more of trying to be a stand-up bully striker. And to me, I just don't see a way where Preston can find a way out of it. And, he's not that quick to the counter, and he has a hard time adjusting to shots down low and heavy overhands. So I think to me, this is one where Jacobe can completely control this fight. I think it goes the distance, but I think this is one where it should be easy 30-27, maybe even a 30-26 in there.
I love that you're just predicting all these unanimous decisions here. I think Jacobe Smith has something to prove as far as his gas tank in this fight. I think Preston Parsons can certainly find a way to wear on him later on. Um, but I agree. Yeah, this is a real easy matchup. You know what's so funny? As I was like preparing to talk about this fight, I'm like, why is this? And I swear this is not racism, right? Like, and when I got to preface something like that, it's about to be bad. So, whew. But why is this Kobe Covington versus Joaquin Buckley light? Like, why is this the JPEG version of that fight? I see it going the exact same way. I don't think Jacobe Smith should be like minus 200 to knock him out, but I think it's a very good chance that it's going to happen. Yeah, man. I think the sad part about Preston Parsons' UFC career, at least, is I really do think he has that next gear that not a lot of fighters possess. And if he could find a way to take advantage of that, that's the way he wins here. But all the other composite skills are just in such a bad spot. And what I really don't like about his game too is that he's very reactive. With someone that has such an offensive advantage when it comes to that grappling and wrestling and making things dirty, you would think you would want to act on that, right? You would want to make it a mess. You would want to make it a rough and tumble kind of fight. But I feel like a lot of the times he ends up very hesitant and very put off easily. And then it's like we're running and engaging. It's kind of like a Beyblade almost. And I think that style needs to stop for him. But yeah, it's probably going to stop outside the UFC. Give me Jacobe Smith as well. Next up, damn, Sean, this is one of my favorite fights on the whole motherfucking card, man. I could not wait to talk about this because I'm a big Trey Ogden guy. A big fan of everything that was coming out of that Glory MMA camp and what he has done. What?
That was close. That was close. That sentence,
What?
everything that was coming out of it, and then you finish it off at the camp. I was like, oh, man. That was getting real close. That was getting
This is
real
the kind
close
of
to
things you think about when I talk, clearly. Because
me.
I don't know what
Me,
you're
I
bringing
don't.
this up.
First off, I don't ever say any of these things. I
You
say one
stopped me from
sentence.
talking.
I didn't stop you. I was muted. You fell for whatever my facial reaction was. That was close. First off, you're the king of fucking pause. I can say, yeah, I just walked in the door, dude. Pause. I'm like, what? I just came in the house. Pause. I'm like, what? Okay, hey.
Only when it's
can't
warranted.
say anything.
Only when it's warranted. But anyway, I'm a big fan of how he stepped up for that team in the absence of James Krause. I'm interested to see how that saga plays out too, right? Because when the feds are involved, things are real quiet. And for some reason, we have not heard about that story, right? That whole story has just disappeared until he came out of nowhere and then posted like, if you want to make some money in real estate, hit me up. And then just disappeared again, like deleted that message too. Like This whole James Krause saga is insane. I knew it was insane when I saw him wearing that AP while he was fucking coaching. I'm like, hold on, you're wearing an AP, and the most famous fighter in your gym probably can barely afford a millionaire's house. Not gonna be able to do it. So clearly there was some fishy shit going on. But James Krause, as a man and a fighter and a coach, like, in my opinion, that's the saddest story of Glory MMA. I think he had the potential to be a fixture in MMA as a coach. He, in my opinion, him and Eric Nixick were on the forefront of something really great at the same time, and it sucks that we only got to see Eric Nixick flourish in that role. I think ultimately what Trey Ogden has done for that team is super inspirational, right? He is now the James Krause of this team, and going out there doing big things for these guys and performing extremely well at the highest level. In a weight class that's fucking nails too, right? This is no easy matchups. So I say all this to say Thiago Moises is a bad fucking man. And I think a lot of people have come knocking at this door many times to try to break into that top 15 area. Because honestly, I think with a win over Thiago Moises, you're a shot, you're probably a fight away from getting a top 15 fight if you continue to win. So the fact that they're giving him this fight, I think, is interesting, and the fact that the line is where it is, kind of also makes me a little nervous. Because I want to lean with Trey Ogden. That's my guy. We all know this. But I'm gonna be picking Thiago Moises. I think his ability to obviously do damage at range in general, but also his ability to be physical on the feet and on the ground, I think is gonna be the difference here. I think Trey Ogden is a very technical fighter and he has definitely worked on his athletic platform, but I'll be really surprised if he has any athletic advantage in this fight. Really, I think it's going to, for Trey Ogden, he's going to have to really find and get his wins in those in between areas, right? Like catching them off clinch breaks, catching them in areas in between combinations. Because if it was just a clean striking kickboxing match, I think Thiago Moises wins this fight easy. And if it was a clean straight jiu-jitsu match, I think Thiago Moises wins that too. Now, if it's a wrestling match, I think Trey Ogden might have a close contest. I still probably won't pick him there either, right? So if you look at it that way, it's kind of easier to pick Thiago Moises. But I think as far as putting the skills together, that's why I'm fascinated by Trey Ogden as a fighter, because although he isn't someone that jumps out the paper at you with his athletic talent, the way he's able to mix things together, he's clearly on the forefront of what it means to fight in MMA. And once again, that's one of my biggest things that I'm a fan of when watching fights. So a lot of narratives here that I gave that are all just, storyline based. I think ultimately skills pay the bills. And I think Thiago Moises with that calf kick is going to go out there and make it look pretty decisive. So give me Thiago.
Dude, you said almost everything that every person has ever said about this fight because you took every angle. I'm literally looking at my notes like, fuck, he didn't say, he just said that. Oh, no, he just.
Do you see that I care about this one?
Yeah, no, I know. This is the on my notes I have hardest fight to choose because I feel like this is the most one-sided. I mean, one-sided. This is the most one-on-one hard to decide who I'm going to choose. Like literally, it's my number one. I have it number one hard to decide because this could go. It's either for me. I felt like they both. Every time I look at a fight, I always look at styles and rhythms. Styles and rhythms. Whose style matches up better in this fight, who does better using their rhythm of, how fluent of a fighter can be in the stand-up, and then how they can transition into the wrestling and the grappling. I think both of them do a really good job in their styles and rhythms in the stand-up, and then I think it's Ogden's wrestling and Moises' grappling that are probably neck and neck when it comes to skill level. So it's a very tough fight for me. Honestly, I'm picking Moises to win, but I would not be surprised. And if I actually had any sort of good luck at all in anything, I would bet Ogden to probably win in like betting line. And I would put some money on it. But I know if I do, he'll get knocked out in 15 seconds because that's just what this game does to me. So I'm picking Moises, but I can never win. But I would not be surprised. Go out there, everybody. Go out there and put some money on Ogden, getting some crazy knockout or winning this in by split or something, because I would not be surprised if it heads that way too. But I think Moises is so good in the grappling that even if it goes to wrestling and Ogden's, a better wrestler, I think Moises is still so dominant on the ground anyway that I almost feel like it will nerf in a way Ogden's wrestling. Not to the point where I think Ogden's can't wrestle with them, but I think Moises can keep up with what Ogden's doing. So to me, I think this one is super super close. But if I had to decipher it, I think Moises has um, more skill level, and I literally have said this so many times on the show that when he fought BSD, I always felt like Moises was the number one gatekeeper of the ranked matchups. He's always right there. If he's not 15, he's 16. He's right there. He's the guy. You beat him, you're probably getting a ranked fight or you're getting a ranking. So this for me feels like a BSD sort of fight, but I don't think Trey is on the BSD level. So I'd be very, very surprised if Trey goes out there and, dominates like BSD did against Moises. But I think Moises wins this fight, but I would not be surprised how close this fight can be.
I love it. We fucking went in on that one. Next up, we got Marco. Don't fuck with me because I pull out the Tulio minus 470 going up against Ihor, the duelist Potieria. I still can't believe what you've done to me, right? I still can't believe you emoted on Shogun, right? I still can't believe that shit, but this is the world we live in. And Sean, it's just so funny that all things considered, the line is this big, and it's been this big for the last couple Ihor Potieria fights. So why don't you give me the full breakdown of one of the best divisions in MMA?
Well, to me, this guy is only in the UFC is for the fact that I know him very well because I picked Robert Brightcheck, whatever the fuck, in the first overall pick in that specific week for that fight night. We were still doing 4 fighters for Dynasty, and I picked Robert because I felt that Ihor was on his way out. He had lost 2 straight. He didn't look good in either of those 2 fights. He got knocked out in both. I felt like this was it. He loses here, it's all done. But then he comes in on short notice versus Robert and has the best performance he's ever had. It was like 3 days notice. He takes the fight. I thought, oh, no doubt, Robert, this is an easy Dynasty win for me. And Robert shits the bed, and Ihor, comes out to prove that he's, legit UFC contender sort of thing, even though Robert proved he was dog shit as well. And then goes on to fight Michel Pereira, gets his ass kicked, and then Cesar Almeida and loses that one as well. So for me, this is one where I feel that this is one where it's striking versus grappling in wrestling, and I think the only way Ihor wins this fight is forcing this to the ground and keeping it to the ground. But to me, I just don't think Tulio is going to let that happen, and I think this fight's going to be super, super one-sided. This is like I have like 2 locks. This is my lock. This is my absolute lock of the week. I think the striking is so different here. I think Tulio just runs right through him. I honestly do think it'll make it past the first round, but I think that this fight will eventually just get stopped standing up, or the ref will just have to jump in. It's been, such an onslaught. So give me Marco the round 2 TKO standing.
I love every second of that. I agree. I think a Superman performance is indicative of the level of competition you're facing. So shout out to that dynasty pull from you. Maybe that's why I'm still leading in the dynasty totals, right? Never lost that shit. You know what I'm saying? We sweep in that category. But moving on to the fun side of things, obviously, all things considered, I'm gonna say it like this, bro. When it comes to this fight, if Ihor Potieria wins, I might go out on a limb and draft Marco Tulio the next time he fights, no matter what my draft pick is. because I am not convinced that Marco Tulio is a good fighter. I'm in no way convinced that Marco Tulio is a good fighter, but I am wholeheartedly convinced that he's going to win this fight. And I also think he's going to win by knockout. I think he is sneaky explosive. I think he gets himself in trouble though by being a little face forward. And I think in a matchup like this with somebody who I think that is Ihor Potieria's moment. Like every time he's had a win, it it comes out of finding moments that look like, when those cartoon brawls happen and then you see like an arm pop out this way and a leg pop out that way. He needs the fight to be like that in order for things to start working out for him. And if it isn't like that, and he's a very good opportunist, right? Maybe that's why he calls himself the duelist, right? We're gonna go out here, we're gonna draw our guns, and let's see who's gonna win. But Marco Tulio, if you don't knock this guy out, you a fraud. Next up, this is the most fraudulent fight on this card, Sean. I was looking for a way to be enthusiastic about this fight. Obviously, shout out to Joshua Van for knocking out Felipe Bunes. Bunes looked all right in the first round, like everyone else does against Josh Van, and then looked absolutely lost after that. Jose Johnson, none of these guys deserve to be in the UFC. Let's just start right there. If this was, I sound like an old head when I say this, but if this was like 5 years ago, none of these guys would be in the UFC, especially because it's not like Jose Johnson has been around for, a year. This motherfucker been around for a minute now. Like I was genuinely surprised when I saw that. I was like, I get it. He isn't the most active fighter too, but I remember when I thought he was good. That's how long he's been in the UFC. Because I've far from thought he's a great fighter. Um, Ultimately though, this is the time to show where your trajectory and improvement is going to go. I think if Felipe Bunes could get this fight to the ground consistently, this is an easy fight for him to win. Now, is Felipe Bunes in any way a wrestler, Sean? We can make this interactive. This show's not really interactive. Hell no! I'll say that like that. Even when he tries,
Try
even when
set
he
me up.
tries, yeah, even when he tries, it does not look good, and it's once again the very grappling style of wrestling. So I think Jose Johnson though looks sharp only on the feet. I think if we could keep this on the feet, he's gonna look sharp. I don't think he's gonna. I mean, he probably could knock out Felipe Bunes if all things considered, but I think if we end up in exchanges that are longer, I think that's where Bunes shows his heart. Like I feel like he could potentially also catch him in those in between phases. But Jose Johnson, I'm gonna pick Jose Johnson, but I hope I don't ever have to pick one of these guys fights again. But I doubt that's gonna happen, Sean.
You know what's funny? To me, I literally put this in that this was like the perfect fight for Bunes here because I felt going from Joshua Van to this, I feel like this was the debut you probably wanted to have against a fighter like Jose Johnson. But still, I think Jose Johnson wins because I still think in this situation, like I agree with you. I don't think either of them are really UFC material. Let's trying to be nice. But I do think that this one is completely one way or the other. I think Johnson does a really good job of using the clinch, going up the middle with the knees, trying to keep the fight close and in close range. And I think something where Bunes really succeeds at is his wrestling is trying to force the fight to the ground. But to me, like this would have been a great fight, and I probably would have picked Bunes if this was like, if Joshua Van didn't exist and this was the first fight. Because I feel like at that point you can get used to what Johnson's going to do in stand up and kind of work his way around it. But in this one, I'm looking at it the opposite way. I feel like Jose Johnson's going to do everything possible to learn everything that Felipe does in the ground game and kind of force Felipe to throw back at him, keep the distance, force Felipe to be uncomfortable, force him to fight Jose Johnson's fight standing, chasing him. And I think that one leads to ultimate disaster. And I think honestly, if this isn't in the first round, I would be I'd be surprised if it makes it to the third round. So for me, I'm going to go early second round knockout, if not third round knockout. But I think this one eventually does get finished, and Johnson's all over it.
20 plus years of selling Johnson and Johnson. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have Punahele Soriano plus 185 going up against Uros Medic minus 200. Sean, I'm not going to lie. This is where the fight card becomes fun, right? Like, I think all of these fights at this point, I'm going to enjoy watching. Like, I'm going to have a good time while it's happening. Um, does that mean that these fights are going to be good? I'm not sure. But at least this one should be a great fight. I think what's so interesting about both these guys is I think if you gave me a time machine, right, and you took me back to only have just the initial wave of enthusiasm about both of these guys, and that was the way I had to look at them, I would say that Punahele Soriano is the more um, fit for MMA fighter. The fighter who I would say, hey, that's the guy that's going to be successful in the UFC versus Uros Medic's style, which obviously is very striking focused. But what shocked me the most when looking at these guys' career is you look at Puna. I looked at Puna early on and I thought just athletically he had the better potential of the two. But what's what most sad in my honesty, because I'm a big Eric Nixick fan and I'm a big fan of all those guys at excuse me, Extreme Couture. I feel like he has regressed at this point of his short MMA stints. And what frustrates me is I think it's just a lot of I feel like there's a lack of trust for the interstitial areas of his game in the striking and in the wrestling phase. Um, that puts him in a weird spot in these fights, man. And I think against somebody like Uros Medic, who at this point in his career fully knows what he wants to go out there and do. Like he has actualized his game in the UFC and actually really changed my perception of him as far as being an easy out, especially in his last fight, right? Well, his last couple fights. His fight with Mick the Beck Orobai obviously didn't go his way, but I thought he showed a lot of his mettle in that fight. And then coming into his next fight right after that and getting a big knockout win against my guy Timmy Means, it hurt. It hurt to witness. Um, but I think that's what he's gonna go out there and do. He's gonna go out there and look to knock guys out, and they're gonna go out there and look to find these criminals, right? But at the end of the day, I think this is a close ass fight, and I think each time Punahele gets a takedown in this fight, there's a very good chance that he finishes out that situation on the ground and in control, which makes this a very tough fight to feel confident on. Yet, and still, I am more confident in what I've seen Uros Medic being able to change the platform of his game throughout his career. So I am more confident in him to go out there and do the things he needs to do to win in this fight. So give me Uros Medic, even though it pains me.
Yeah, to me, I think this is all about war, striking, damage. That's why I feel like this is going to be one of the fun fights of this entire card. I think both of these guys are absolute psychos when it comes to the stand-up and going after one another, but I do feel Soriano does a lot better when it comes to being involved in the chaos, knows how to slow the fight down when in the midst of a chaos moment, striking back and forth, someone's about to get clipped, you're just waiting for it. I feel like Soriano does a really good job of slowing it down and kind of being a little bit more concise in a way. But I do feel with him that his strikes in general aren't as concise as I wanted them, as I hoped that they would be. Before you get into those moments, before you get into those Clash of Titans sort of situations. And to me, I almost feel like Soriano has the advantage if his striking were to match what I feel Uros is. I feel like Uros is striking is much more is stronger, more dominant, and is more methodical. And to me, I feel that's what's going to end up getting this fight finish. Is I think it's just going to take one to really clip, and it's just going to force to the ground and pound, and then we're all done real quick within 5-10 seconds, of one heavy hit. But I do think this fight actually goes to 10-minute mark or past it. I think this is a very fun fight. I would love to see the gas tank on both of them heading into round 3. And the other thing for me is with Soriano. Soriano does a really good job of when he's in the midst of this fucking Clash of Titans going crazy chaos moment of just going to the legs, taking him down, and then slowing it down with him on top and really taking advantage of his wrestling. I feel like he doesn't use his wrestling enough. I feel like he has a great background in it, but I feel like he only uses it after he's in these big moments and kind of uses it as like a crutch. I wish he would use it more as like that should be his 1A and his stand up should be his 1B. If you have striking like that in the bag where you could slow the game down in those sort of big moments, use your wrestling to the point where you can drain the energy or force him to the ground and have him really thinking you're getting low all the time, and then use your striking as your your big power punch. I felt like that's Soriano's biggest thing. I feel like Soriano should be he's here. I feel like he should be here, but I just feel like his fighting strategy brings him back down to here. And fighting someone like Euros, I feel like he should be the better fighter here. But I just feel in my heart of hearts that Euros is more precise with his striking, and it's just going to take one. And I just feel like too many hits from Euros hitting Soriano is just going to do enough damage. It's like you're going to see it like, when you're playing Street Fighter, the bar of the health. Every time Soriano hits, Euros is going down little, but every time Euros hits, it's going chunks. And you're just going to see Soriano eventually crumble. And I hate seeing that because I think Soriano has real potential here. I just think right now, I think Euros is the better striker.
And the sad part about it too is he lets the Hawaiian come out, right? He's just willing to brawl, even when it doesn't. Like I've seen him get stuck at the end of guys' kicks and then continue to try to be in that situation. Like, bro, just fucking lock in. But it's okay. We will move on to the next fight. The fight that, if I'm being honest, Sean, I'm the most excited about on this entire card. This is number one. This is main event for me. We got Christian Rodriguez, Sean's Dynasty's own Christian Rodriguez plus 225 going up against Austin Bashi minus 285, making his UFC debut coming off of a big submission win in Dana White's Contender Series to get the contract. Sean, I'm starting this off with a question, right? Because usually I don't get the chance to start it off with a question. I'm starting this off with a question. I know that this is your dynasty guy in C Rod. How do you feel about Christian Rodriguez being in the position to do what he does best, turn back up and coming prospect in the UFC?
I actually, you know what? I think the odds are a little whack, but I think they're like that because of his loss to Julian Erosa. That's what I think is the shitty part about the whole thing. Because I'm a big fan of Christian Rodriguez. I think people he put himself on the map, beating Rosas Jr. Like everyone, I think we knew who he was, but I think the casual fan saw when he faced Raul and thought Raul will just walk right through this guy. Who is Christian Rodriguez? Like he ain't anything special. And how easily he was able to nerf the up and coming Raul, who was going through these fighters so quickly at such a young age. But after that, beating Cameron Simon or Simon, whatever the fuck, and then I had to look this up because I couldn't remember this dude's name. Isaac Dolgarian, that was the guy I couldn't remember. That fight. So I've been a fan of him, and honestly, if I wasn't so confident in what Austin Bashi brings and what I saw him in the Contender Series, I probably would have picked Christian Rodriguez for the remainder of time. Like I'm always a fan of Christian Rodriguez. I've always have been, but I just feel in this one like Bashi is so good. I think he has really good potential. I don't think anyone even knows who he is yet, and that's why he's one of my favorites, in the UFC already coming up, because he's I think gonna take this whole division by storm very quickly. I think obviously the fighters know who he is, but I'm saying the fans who pay attention to the featherweights aren't really checking out for Austin Bashi yet. So for me, I hate doing this because he's dynasty. But for me, I think this is a really, really, really close fight. Like really, really close. And you know what? I'm gonna take Rodriguez. I just changed my mind. I just changed my mind mid thought because I have to stick. I have to stick with what I feel in my heart of hearts. And I've said this in 2023, and I said it in 2024 that experience takes you a long way in the UFC fight game. And Christian Rodriguez has plenty of experience against all these up and comers who are supposed to be bigger names than him, and he knows exactly what it takes to shut that shit down real quick. And I think he has a really good fight camp. I think he's got a great team, and I think he does really well at studying each and every fighter. I think the Arosa fight was kind of like a not a fluke, but more of like a that's not Christian Rodriguez. And I think it's so quick for a fighter like Christian Rodriguez that they could build up a 5-fight win streak. But the second they lose, it's like, yeah, that's who he really is. He sucks. All right, let's move on. Like I hate that for someone like Christian Rodriguez because I think he's so good. And to get plus 195 odds is a little crazy. Like I said, I always think this is like a pick 'em fight between these two, but I really do think this is a close fight. Probably fight of the night. I picked on my for fight of the night, and I'm gonna say Rodriguez takes it out. I don't have a winner here. I literally decided right before when you were talking about the last fight. I literally wrote Bashy UD, and then I was like, you know what? Give me Rodriguez. So give me Christian Rodriguez via unanimous decision. Hell of a brawl, fight of the night, performance of the night for one of them. Great fight.
Dude, I love every second about everything you said because you validated so much for me, right? Like there was, I'm gonna go out on a whim here and say that this should have 1,000% been the main event. Secondly, the UFC is clearly on the same board as you and I on this guy's potential because he got a debut against somebody who has this level of experience in the UFC and is this level of fighter in the UFC. I think that says so much about what they think about him. Let's be honest here. You know how there was a couple fights early on that like minus 700, minus 800. If there's a fighter that deserves to be at those odds on this card, it's Austin Bashy. Now, the reason why the odds don't look that way is because of the person he's fighting. The fact that he's this big of a favorite against C-Rod is crazy. Like, it speaks to the level that he is. And now, let's talk about the man. Let's talk about what he does so well. I think he is like Aaron Pico in reverse, right? He is Aaron Pico if he focused on grappling instead of striking first. And the way in which you see him chain things together and the relentlessness of pursuing these exchanges is honestly something that I'm not sure is sustainable in MMA. Like I'm really excited to watch his career because of how aggressive he is and how willing he is to play that game with people. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this here. Like, obviously it's against lower level competition, but his gas tank doesn't make sense when you look at his physique. This guy's huge for 45. And I think that is the biggest factor in this matchup because Christian Rodriguez is tiny for this weight class. Skill for skill, especially when it comes to the striking and the in between phases of grappling, right? Adding in your clinch strikes, adding in those little MMA big difference makers that you get with experience. That's where he lacks in this matchup. I think Christian Rodriguez is phenomenal, like you said. He's somebody that if you want someone to go out there and emulate a fighter, I think he's someone that's great to point at, man. He's solid everywhere, and he's interested in exploiting you where he knows he's better than you. That is, you know, it sounds very simple, but we are fans of a sport where most people just go out there and fucking throw their grenades until the other guy has none left. Christian Rodriguez goes out there and picks you apart in the ways he knows he can beat you at the times he knows he needs to beat you. We saw that against Raul Rosas, right? Put him in bad positions early, but then also showed him this isn't just about the striking that I'm better than you. I can also put you in bad positions countering your grappling. I could also danger you and put you in positions where I could land damage because of your mistakes in the grappling. These are all the areas that make this fight dangerous and why the line is where it is. I'm just going to be real. But I think honestly though, if I'm in Christian Rodriguez's camp, I need to find a way to get this man to 35 because I think at 35 he legitimately has championship potential. I think at this weight class, it's just going to be so hard, in my opinion, to not find yourself in an opinion in a position where you're already down two and you need to find a way to make that person fall apart. Like I feel like that's what his game at 45 is forcing, and I think the difference you saw in the matchup with the Rosa, right? Shout out to Rosa, another gritty vet too that people don't give the love he deserves. That's another guy that is nails, that has been in this shit for years, multiple runs in the UFC, making this shit happen. I think the length was the issue there too, right? These are shots that I think generally wouldn't put him out if he's fighting someone that is closer to his size. He looks dwarfed out there in that matchup, and I think it's gonna look similar visually in this one. I'm interested to see if Bashi could stay ahead of him in the grappling exchanges. I think we've seen that in all his fights. Can you do that against someone who's shown to be so defensively good at grappling in C-Rod? I don't think so. And that's what's going to make this fight so fun is I think it's not going to be a lot of control. It's going to be a lot of in-between positions and a lot of fighting for things. And that's what you love in grappling matches. Very reminiscent, if you ask me. This is high-level praise right here, but very reminiscent of the brawl we got last year between Movsar Evloev and excuse me, Movsar Evloev and Diego Lopes. I think this is going to be that kind of a fight where it's going to be clear that Austin Bashi's the winner, but you get to see the best of what both of these guys can bring to the table. So this was our main event. Let's move on to the co-main. Sean, do you have wait? Do you have anything else to say on this one? Because this is our main event.
I would love to say I agree with you, and I wish I said this earlier. Is I do feel like if you can get C Rod to 135, I think that would be awesome, like awesome for him. I never even had that thought of like potentially putting that for him because I do feel that that he's pretty tiny for 145. But if there was a way to get him to 135, bro, I think his potential that I already love now, I think at 135 for a veteran like him, man, and I know 135 is one of the toughest divisions, if not the, but man, that would be so fucking awesome to see. I would pay to watch him fucking go to 135. If he were a main event on a pay per view, I'd watch. At
He used to fight. He
135,
used to fight at 35, and now
no,
he
I
moved
know,
back up. And it's
but
like it
yeah,
sucks to see you can't keep that because clearly you had such a big advantage even when you were the smaller guy at 35. So yeah, that guy's fucking nails, man. I love this fight. I love that you have him on Dynasty, and I love that I've made it clear who I'm picking with my number one overall pick. Next up, we got Chris Curtis plus 190. Yeah, you can be afforded to do things like that when you know you go first. Yeah, I'm if when I know next week, the guys that I like next week, oh, I'm not talking shit. I'm gonna be like, yeah, this is gonna be a close one. I think I'm gonna pick him, but it's closer than I think. And then when it's time to draft, I'm gonna be like, let's go. But
trust
anyway,
me, I know your tell already, so you can't. That doesn't work. You think it works, but it doesn't. I know your tell.
oh, I'm interested. I might inquire about what you think that is later. But we got a
Why
co-main event.
why why would I tell you that so that you're gonna change it? What
Uh,
is this? Come on, man. I know your tell. Why do you think I picked the best dynasty guys? Why do you think I win?
Shut
All
the
right.
hell up. That's just a lie. You win in the pick'em. Shut up. Next up, we've got Chris Curtis plus 190 going up against Roman Kopylov minus 225. Sean, this is another opportunity for you to talk about another one of your dynasty guys, right? Roman Kopylov is always one of my favorite dynasty guys to talk about because he was one of those first four, right? One of the first four guys you ever drafted. Shout out to Roman Kopylov, still out here doing the damn thing and on an awesome trajectory in his career despite recent issues, right? Going up against someone who also has a lot of recent motherfucking issues in Chris Curtis. Um, I like this fight for both of these guys, funny enough. I think Roman Kopylov has the skills to style on Chris Curtis from the outside and land, especially body damage, attritive damage, to slow Chris Curtis down, take away some of his wheels, and win a decision. But I also think Chris Curtis thrives in matchups just like this, where he has someone that is longer than him and interested in being longer than him, but is at an athletic disadvantage. I think Chris Curtis if he's going to win this fight, is going to be hurting Roman Kopylov consistently until he could find a point to knock him out. It's not going to be, I'm going to knock you out in one punch. But I think ultimately what makes this fight so fun is that Roman Kopylov is so fucking good, right? This guy just continues to get better and better, and is going to force a good fight out of Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis cannot sit back and sort of wait for the perfect moment. This is going to be all action early because that's the kind of fighter Roman Kopylov is. And if Chris Curtis can't get out of the way of that fire, right? Um, then it's going to be a hard night, man. It's going to be really hard to overcome that. I'm interested to see if Chris Curtis decides to unleash his wrestling and grappling. This is a camp that is known for knowing what their fighters' strengths are, knowing what their fighters' weaknesses are, and sharpening those things in silence, right? We see how quick Francis Ngannou developed not only his defensive grappling, but his offensive grappling under Eric Nicksick and this team. I think Chris Curtis can potentially implement some of those techniques here, but my problem is I don't trust him to do that. And I think if he were to entertain that route more, I think he would actually have a really good chance to win this fight and probably might deserve to be favored. But we've never seen him do it. And we've seen him go out there and be comfortable doing what he always does. And he's really fucking good at it. So it makes sense, right? Like, I understand. It's so funny, right? That's the quarrel with having power. It's like you could understand why this guy fights this way because he's so crafty and he sets people up so often to get knocked out. He's knocked out so many guys in spectacular fashion in his career. And I remember there was a time where we thought we weren't going to get a UFC career out of Chris Curtis. And despite most of the time being a 500 fighter and not being someone that's been able to climb to the championship level just yet in his UFC run, I think his skills are much more indicative than his record, right? It's just, if anything, it really speaks to the level of competition and the people he's fighting. So this is an awesome fight, man. I'm really pumped about it as well. But I'm just such a big fan of Roman Kopylov. I'm leaning that way. So give me Roman.
Yeah, for me, this is for me. I feel weird about this one because I don't know honestly where Chris Curtis's headspace is at. You know, in his last fight, I felt like after he lost to Brendan Allen, especially, it almost felt like he was done. Like he didn't want to keep doing this, you know, or he did. You know, I know his emotions got the best of him, but you know, it's hard when you get to that point in your career and you're kind of bouncing back and forth between wins and losses, and you know the streaks aren't as easy as they once were. You know, when you first came into the UFC, definitely takes a toll on you mentally because you know the camp only gets harder the older you get, and the results become even harder to become twice as hard to get with the camp you put in. So I feel like for me, I don't think this is the Chris Curtis of old. I think this is Chris Curtis who's trying to win this fight and probably looking at this as if he loses this one, it's probably heading towards the outskirts of his career. But I feel like Kopylov is just so fucking multi-dimensional, man. He could do so many different things. He could pick you apart from anywhere. And for me, I really focus on the body kicks on this fight. I think he's really going to focus on attacking Chris Curtis's body, and even if he does for a little bit and then kind of goes with like you know the feints, I think he's just going to expose Curtis's defense so fast because Curtis has a good defense. I will give him that, you know, especially when takedown defense on any if there's any sort of one-dimensional wrestler out there, he does a really good job of controlling the wrestling and forcing it to, you know, powerful striking into his fight. For me, I feel like Roman is just so, like I said, multi-dimensional where he can bring you down if he wants to, but I think he's gonna go and force this to the stand-up while he's just attacking every part from the legs to the body. You know, high kicks are guarded by the arm, going for the head. You know, Curtis has a very jaded stance. You know, it's not easy to hit, especially when you're trying to aim for the head. But I think Roman's going to do such a good job of slowing Curtis down with the body shots and the leg kicks that eventually Curtis is going to get stuck and be too slow to get away from Roman. That I think at first you're going to see Curtis going kind of guns blazing a little bit, trying to feel him out. You know, maybe connect one or two and then really try to get Roman early. But I think Roman has a really good job of adjusting and forcing this fight, even if it gets to rounds 2 and 3. and then just fully taking over and going really balls to the wall onto Curtis, forcing him to the cage, and teeing off at that point. I just don't see Curtis finding a way to sneak out of it at this point. I do think this one will go the distance. I honestly don't think anyone's getting knocked out here, but I think this is going to be one of those masterful performances in the striking from Kopylov, really putting himself on the map in the striking game that he already has, and showing someone like Chris Curtis who's just so dynamic in the striking game and really good at the takedown defense and wrestling, that even he, is no match for someone in the trajectory of where Roman's going. So I hate to see that because I've always been a fan of Chris Curtis, and I love, I don't watch him anymore, but when his little vlogs or blogs that he did with Sean Strickland, I think he's just a fun guy to be around. I think he definitely knows how to deal with Sean unlike anybody else, and I think Chris Curtis is probably one of the best teammates that probably have in a cage. He looks out for the best of you, but he also brings you his best so that you can get better, but he doesn't want to hurt you. And you gotta love a teammate like that. He's gonna stand by you throughout, everything. But you could tell that every loss that gets to him fucking deflates him, seriously. I think after that loss to Brendan Allen, I think that was probably the worst I had seen him mentally. He was really destroyed after that. When you have someone like Sean Strickland as a teammate, it ain't gonna get better. So it's not easy, but I unfortunately am picking Kopylov here. But I hope Curtis has a hell of a performance that he can bounce back quick.
Yes, sir. We are all hoping good things for Chris Curtis, but we're both picking Roman. Next up, we move on to another Sean-filled fight. God damn it. We got a double header. We got both dynasty fighters, so it's only right that my guy gets the chance, the opportunity to talk about this fight first. We've got Cesar Almeida, minus 258, going up against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, plus 220. If there's anything that's true about this fight, Sean, damn, them boys is big at middleweight. Holy.
Listen, for me, I think this is a pretty one-sided fight. It sucks that I have Abdul in this one. I don't even remember drafting him. That's how much it bothers me. I feel like I drafted him with Dudakova, but the fact that I saw that I have him as well, it breaks my heart because I think to me this is pretty, for me. I feel like very one-sided. I think Abdul is a very good striker, and I think he's powerful. Big guys like you said. Really strong hands. It's gonna put the pressure on Almeida, but I think Almeida is so fucking good at kickboxing that I just feel like Abdul has no match for the kickboxing that Cesar Almeida is about to bring. I just mentioned how good Kopylov is, and that fight between the two of them was awesome. Split decision, really close. I wouldn't have been surprised if it went Almeida's way. I thought that when he lost to Kopylov, it kind of deflated him as well. Not like mentally him, but what the viewers and UFC fans see in Cesar Almeida. I think that was an incredible fight, and I think they'll see each other again. I think their trajectory both is still pretty good. That they'll, maybe a year or two down the line, they may have a rematch when it's a big fight between them. So I think Cesar is really, really good at the kickboxing. I think one of the best kickboxers probably in all of middleweight. And then I think for me, when it comes to the wrestling, I think Abdul shines in this one. But, with his judo, I don't know how well his judo is going to do against Cesar's kickboxing. And for me, I feel like Cesar is going to do everything he possibly can to keep this fight standing and finish it early. To me, I have this as a first-round knockout because I feel that the longer this fight goes, the more of a chance Abdul has to taking this to the ground and going all judo on this. And if it goes to the judo, honestly, I know I sounded like kindergartner saying that, but if this fight gets to the ground, I think he shines in this moment. I think it might be all Abdul from that moment. So, as much as I think both of these fighters have fucking aged and are still in this game, I do still feel Cesar Almeida has potential and still has much to prove here. So I'm gonna say Cesar takes his fight. I think he does it in the first round, and I can't wait to see what's next for him because I think 2025 is the biggest year of his career.
I fucking love it, Sean. I'm not gonna lie, when I was breaking down this fight, I had that same thought, right? I'm like, if Abdul can be consistent and go out there and attack in those grappling phases, I didn't expect Roman Kopylov to make that his game plan, and he got it to work for him, right? So, and barely. So, this fight here is tricky, man. I think the only thing that made it easier on me was the developments that came out in this fight camp, which is the realization that, hey, I lost, and hey, this guy moved up, so maybe our paths aren't going to cross. So why don't I lean on this guy? Why don't I reach out to Alex Pereira and find out what that training feels like, to find out what the adaptation of a kickboxer to an MMA fighter needs? Let me go out there and train with those guys in Connecticut. And when I heard that, I was like, that's the smartest thing this guy could be doing right now, and let's see those calf kicks in this fight. I think that will single-handedly shut down the wrestling. If we see that, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, I agree, has super explosive takedowns. Everything this guy does is explosive. No pause. This guy is all team jacked top five dudes walking out of that bus. That's Abdul Razak Al Hassan. The dude is entirely bricked up, and I think that's the scary thing in this matchup is I don't even think he necessarily even has to get a takedown. Like he can get one of those pushes or he could get one of those small trips with a push that kind of looks like a punch, right? Like Abdul Razak Al Hassan, a lot of his opportunistic moments in these fights where he gets top control come from moments like that. It's not necessarily I'm going out here and shooting for a double. I'm going out here and working to get some sort of judo throw. Nah, it's just my base is so sturdy that when I feel you're off yours, I'm barreling you over. And that's dangerous, man. That's a dangerous person to fight in this matchup. But I think I kind of almost talked myself into this fight being closer than it is. I think Cesar Almeida, all things considered, should be able to keep this one at range. And this is another one of those fights where I feel he is the fighter that belongs in this weight class. I think if Abdul Razak Al Hassan fought and was able to maintain his career welterweight, I think he would have higher potential. But in this matchup against someone that is also having those physical gifts, it sort of evens out the playing field. Even though I still 100% am saying that the better athlete, the scarier striker when it comes to single strikes is Abdul Razak Al Hassan. But that fear fades after, honestly, probably like the first 3.5 minutes of a fight, because after that point, it becomes almost like a if you're not gonna force me to die, I need to make sure I don't kill myself situation with Abdul Razak Al Hassan's gas tank. So yeah, Cesar Almeida is the play. Cesar Almeida is the pick. And honestly, if he loses here, although it's a tough test and a close fight, I think it's a bad loss. Like I think it's a badder loss than the odds suggest here. But let's move on because we got a co-main event, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what's funny, Sean? Now that we get here, now that we've gotten through the last three fights, I think I like these two fights the least. Out of all the fights we've watched, this is single-handedly the least. And it's because this feels like a matchup between two fighters that are either really good at something or really bad at the other. And in this case, Santiago Ponzinibbio minus 135 goes up against Carlston Harris at plus 120. My guy, Carlston Harris, representing the Chris Negron Dynasty team. Obviously, super excited to see the developments in his game coming off of a big, shocking KO. I think that can be the best thing that happens to a fighter like Carlston Harris because of where his advantages lie. Obviously, not the first time he's felt that in his career, but also I think this matchup, man, is just so strange because if this was, I know that's an easy thing to say, but if this was a couple years ago, this fight would be easy for me to pick Santiago Ponzinibbio. And I when I saw the matchup, I was like, yeah, man, this is I might not even have to watch too much tape. But then when I got to the closer fights, at this stage of Santiago Ponzinibbio's career. I'm like, man, the Ponzi scheme is not who he once was, brother. It's a lot of life and death out there, man. This motherfucker, you got to give it to him. He reminds me of if Tony Ferguson didn't fall off the cliff, but his production fall off is like at the relative same rate. Like I feel like when he was on that initial run before he had those knee injuries, like I thought he could be champ. That dude was top 5. Like that guy was on his way. But at this stage of his career, honestly, he looks really small at this weight class, man. And it's kind of shocking to say against someone like Carlston Harris that looks absolutely huge in this weight class. I think on the feet, Santiago Ponzinibbio is a black belt and Carlston Harris is probably like a blue belt. Like I think this fight is very dangerous for Carlston at range, but I don't trust Santiago to have that clubbing power he had early on in his career. I think this is going to be a uphill matchup because you're hoping on knocking out a guy that is bigger and more durable than you. Like that's a scary proposition. Now, don't get me wrong, skills pay the bills. And if this was a striking contest only, I'm never picking Carlston Harris. But all things considered, as soon as Carlston Harris gets an advantageous position against the fence anywhere, I think that round is won. And that's a dangerous spot to be in for someone who has gas take issues at this stage of their career, on top of being the smaller athlete. This just feels like an MMA pick for me, man. You pick the guy with the superior grappling skills. Give me Carlston Harris.
Yeah, you know what's so tough about this is the fact picking Ponzinibbio in 2025 is definitely a risk. To talk about Ponzinibbio at this rate of 2025 is crazy because I feel like ever since he came back from his 3-year hiatus of all the injuries and really trying to get back and from 2018 to like 2021, after COVID and all that, I feel like he was never really the same. I even think the reason he's only here right now is his fight against Alex Morono. I always feel like when that happens, when it's just sometimes you'll see a guy who's clearly on the downfall, but all of a sudden lands like one punch or one big shot, and you just basically kept him in the game for another 2 years. Sometimes that happens for fighters. Like I was convinced at a time that if Tony Ferguson had somehow found a way to snuck away with a victory versus Chandler, we'd still see Ferguson for another 2 fights. Like that's how much, or 3 fights. That's what happens to guys who are definitely heading out in their career. And for me, this is one of those moments because honestly, I think Ponzinibbio is at this rate of his career pretty ass at when he gets his when taken to the ground. I think he really struggles against a bigger welterweight and getting back up. I think he has a tougher time than when he used to, where I felt like he was able to found a way, even when on his back, to find a way back to the cage and stand himself back up. For me, I think Harris does a really good job of when he forces him to the ground, finding a way to get quickly to the neck and forcing the choke. But for me, I think Ponzinibbio knows this is probably one of a handful, if not 3 fights at the very most, left in his career. I think this potentially could be the final fight of his career. But for me, I feel a little too weird taking someone like Ponzinibbio in 2025. I think Ponzinibbio has a clear striking advantage here. But I just think with someone like Carlston Harris, I think he can find a way to force us to the ground. And then from there, I just don't see Ponzinibbio really having a shot at finding a way back up. I know I say that as in like they'll never find a way back up, but I mean that in a way of like when you find your way back up, how much energy has it taken out of you? How hard was it to get up now so that when you get taken down again the second time, how deflating is it for you physically and mentally? And I think that's something where Carlston Harris can easily strive in. But I would not be surprised. This is another one of those fights that I don't care about, where I feel that this could either be you could put money on Ponzinibbio round 2 knockout. This is one of those fights where Ponzinibbio could turn back the clock, show his hands are still what they were, and prove it this weekend and be the guy he was in 2016, 2017. But we're in 2025 now, so I think that his prime has left him 6 years ago. And I think this is one where, I'm not the craziest of fans of Carlston Harris, but I think he has more than enough to get the job done here, and I think I got to go to Harris here.
It's crazy because we sound so, like you say, we sound so bullish on him, but Carlston Harris is so wide open that he could get knocked down the
Yeah.
first. Like he could get knocked out immediately. So did you
Yes.
just pause me again? Damn, bro, I'm going
You
outside.
said
I know
Harris
what I
is
said. I know what I
wide
said.
open. Come
But
on.
in his stance, you know exactly what I mean, bro. But
I
yeah, we
do,
move
but
on.
that was
Next up,
close.
yeah, it was bad. Next up, we move on to the fight that is the namesake of this event. God damn it. We got Mackenzie Dern going up against Amanda Hibash. Now, I want to make sure of something really quick because I'm a little nervous right now, Sean. I'm a little nervous. I don't want to start it off, you know, hyping it up and talking all this stuff when I made a mistake. God damn it. The odds on this are listed incorrectly, so we're going to work on that to flip them. But we got Mackenzie Dern coming in at a plus 163 underdog going up against Amanda Hibash coming up as a minus 190 favorite. This is the rematch of a fight that took place in 2019 and almost nobody remembers. I try to talk to multiple fans, well, friends of mine that have been fans for a long time, and they forgot about this fight completely. They're like, they fought? I'm like, yeah, you don't remember? Um, but I don't blame them though, because this is a rematch that nobody asked for. Go back and watch that first fight. It was not competitive or fun at all. So Sean, by some sick turn of events, you have been tasked not only to lead the dance on a women's fight, but to lead a dance on a women's main event, Sean. So why don't you do the damn thing?
I appreciate you for allowing me in the first event of 2025 to get a women's main event MMA main card, perfect, everything I could have asked for, and for me to lead the dance. So for me, honestly, listen, this may sound very I don't even know the word, very wrong of me, but I don't feel like much has changed from both of these fighters in the 5 or 6 years, 5 years now, let's say, since they fought. I do feel obviously they both grown. They both had their moments where they were in, and one is still in the top five rankings or top five, close to top five rankings. But for me, I always felt RIbas was a better striker, even though Mackenzie Dern shows she's a better striker. I feel like RIbas is so much more precise. I think Amanda does a really good job of kind of holding in when she's going to throw, dances around, and is so quick, really quick punches that land. It's almost like hard to recognize. Um, Being like snappy, very quick with the jab, and being able to move very quickly to the left or right, depending on wherever she is. I think she does a really good job at the striking, forcing Mackenzie to be very, very uncomfortable while standing up, and almost you're gonna. I feel like in this fight, it's gonna be boring as all hell. But I feel like you're gonna see one where you're just gonna be forcing Mackenzie to wrestle. Now, obviously, Mackenzie is the better wrestler here. I think everyone knows. In this situation, that's Mackenzie Dern's bread and butter. She's gonna go all out and try to force the wrestling game. I think I think this fight's gonna be forced to the ground, and I think Amanda's gonna do everything to keep this fight um, in a stand-up, more slower competition. But I think this is what I feel. I feel like that's kind of how the first fight went, where no one really talks about the first fight. No one asks for the second fight, and this one's going to be one where it's just slower. It's going to go all 25, and this one ends with I think Amanda Ribas getting her hand raised. I would love my alternate is that I see Ribas finding a way to connect after just really pushing Mackenzie back so much and stuffing the takedowns, where you see Mackenzie sort of get really tired after 15 minutes. That I actually have in my alternate as Ribas knocks her out in round 4, but I don't expect it. That's like best case scenario for me as a fan, as a viewer. But in this one, I think this one goes all 25 minutes, and I think Ribas controls it 4 rounds to 1. I really do. I think there's going to be one round, maybe in the second, maybe or the first, where Mackenzie does really well with the wrestling. But I think Amanda and her team knows that that's going to be where Mackenzie's going to try to jump for, try to stand up a little bit. It's kind of like it reminds me. I know it's going to sound crazy, but it reminds me a little bit of like Ronda Rousey in a way, where Ronda tried to strike at times, but you knew that the fucking hip toss was coming, and you were just kind of waiting for it. A lot of fighters struggled to see that, but I think I'm not trying to say they're the same fighter because they're not the same fighter. I'm just saying that when you saw someone like Ronda Rousey fight, you knew that her striking was potential bottom 10 dog shit, but you knew that eventually, if you fought in Mackenzie Dern, if you fought Ronda Rousey's fight in the grappling, if she got a hold of you, it was a rough night. And obviously, Ronda did it at the very best at that point in time. And Mackenzie's still trying to get there. And that's why, for me, I feel Amanda's going to do a really good job. Eventually, will get taken down. But I do think she's going to do a really good job in this camp of forcing her way back to the cage, finding a way up, and continuing to just snipe at Mackenzie Dern's fucking forehead. And eventually, we'll get to the point where Mackenzie Dern slows down to the point of a finish in round 4, late in round 4, or just goes all the way 25 minutes and have this at a 49-46 rate.
Wow, man. You know what's so crazy? I'm going to probably be brief on this one because you definitely touched on a lot of things that I want to talk about. But the dynamic is insane. So I'm going to start off at the top by saying I agree with you. I'm picking Amanda Hebos, but I see this fight playing out like completely differently than you do. Apparently, like a completely different version, the alternate version. So what's impressed me the most when watching the film on both of these ladies is Mackenzie Dern's improvement at MMA. Like I think back then when they fought, she still had the same intentions with how she fought as far as I'm gonna brawl with you out here and I don't care. And then when I get down, I'm gonna figure out a way to dominate you and win. She still had those same intentions, but her skills were nowhere near they are now. And that not only comes with the actual composite skills, right? Working with Jason Perillo to get better at your striking, adding kicks to your game. They don't look the best. Her chin isn't always down, but she's throwing in combination now, right? There's legitimate changes to her game that you can point to and say these are the reasons why she's getting better. I think the most impressive win on her resume is a name that does not going to make sense for Sean because he just cut them from their dynasty team. But that is Lupi Godinez. And my reason for feeling that way is because I'm still very high on Lupi Godinez. I think she's a very well rounded fighter in this weight class. And I think she's going to eventually find her way into that top 15 once again. But I think what was so impressive about that fight was Mackenzie Dern's ability to build on the feet as that fight went on, landing jabs on the half beat, landing jabs into straight rights, even if it's not necessary. You don't look at these strikes like, oh god damn, that 1-2 is clean as hell. But it's better than it was. And the intention and the thoughts of when you're throwing it is better than it was. Her athletic platform is the best it's ever been in her career. And to see that in her last fight is super encouraging in this matchup. I really think the dynamic in this fight with Amanda Hebos coming back down to strawweight has been sort of the thing that plagues Amanda Hebos' career at strawweight in general, and that's durability. I think in this fight, crazy enough, call me crazy, I think the fighter that's more live to knock somebody out or to get a knockdown is Mackenzie Dern. I think Mackenzie Dern has the power to rock Amanda Hebos and put her in a bad spot. We've seen her get rocked, honestly, in a lot of fights that she's won, and all the fights she's lost has come from a moment of her getting rocked or stunned, especially when she's gotten finished. This is a dangerous fight, and I think Amanda Hebos needs to, like you said, work the same game plan she worked in the first fight, right? Defuse the bomb, work from outside, make the shots further away from you so that you're not dealing with this person's direct advantage. But let me make one thing clear that I 1,000% disagree with you on. Amanda Hebos is the better grappler in this matchup. Not. Oh, excuse me. The better wrestler in this matchup. Not the better grappler, the better wrestler. And I think she has the strength to overpower her in those phases. But I think when it comes to one shot power, Mackenzie Dern is the one that has the power to light her up and knock her out. Um, I think Amanda Hebos's knockout though will come by attrition. I think this will be an accumulative style of a knockout, and I think she is going to win by knockout. But I think what makes this fight so fun is can Amanda Hebos stay focused for 25 minutes? We saw her defend initial exchanges on the ground as well, and the fact that Mackenzie Dern doesn't really find herself in top position often is dangerous. But guess what, Sean? The fight against Lupi Godinez, we saw Mackenzie Dern wrestle against the cage successfully. So that's not something we had in her game previously. Like, I don't think people understand how remarkable that is. To get successful takedowns against someone like Lupi Godinez, who has shown to have competent grappling, when you have been known to be a BJJ specialist, like that is a huge, and once again, I think that also comes with the gain in her athletic platform. So that's what makes this matchup so fun for me. You got to defuse one hell of a bomb that as soon as it gets dangerous, it can get catastrophic. But ultimately, I think Amanda Ribas is just too technical on the feet and also too game. Like Amanda Ribas, that is, if there's one aspect of her game that I think separates her as a fighter from anybody in this weight class, it's her fucking gameness, man. She does not care if you're landing. She does not care if you've been landing for 2 rounds straight. She is going to go after you and work in combination. A lot of telegraphing, in my opinion, of her strikes, especially at range, is very clear what's coming, right? But can you stop it? That's the question. I think this fight is actually closer than the odds suggest. I think it's going to be scrappy at times. But if Amanda Ribas is winning, like you said, this is going to be a boring fight. I think Mackenzie Dern makes it more fun than the first one, but give me Amanda Ribas as well. Any last thoughts before we move on to Dynasty, Sean?
No, because
Yep.
I can't wait for the next card.
Yeah, that's when things get fun. I thought we made a good show out of this, though. I
We
think we
did.
got some
We
really
did. I'm
fucking good
actually
gems
impressed
out
with
of
both
this.
of us.
Yeah, man, this was fun. I can't believe we're an hour and 40 into this kind of an episode. But that's what happens when you got 14 fights. Now,
That's right.
Dynasty. Da 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 da. My first round pick, Austin Bashi. What is yours?
Ah, you know me. Time to settle in and really start to think. There's actually a couple pretty good options. Um, Austin Bashi was definitely number one though, and then the other ones are kind of like it depends on where their careers kind of traject afterwards. So for me, I don't know whether to go with the safe pick or to really kind of gamble. But for me, I don't like it. I don't like. I do, but I don't because I don't know what's next for this person. I think I can get an easy win now. I just don't know about later. So give me. Oh God, it sucks. Do I have you? Do I have you waiting or something? Are you waiting on me?
I mean, the entire show ends when you're done. So maybe I'm waiting on you. I love
Maybe.
that this always happens too. Like it
I
is
know.
never a full consideration. Is never, oh, I already figured this out because
I
I
did
thought
figure
about
it out, but
this.
I've been contemplating because I think there's a better pick here, but I think I want to start off because I have 9 fighters or 8 fighters already that I need
Yeah,
to find a way to get a win
make it
here.
work. Yeah, that's true. I like the way you're
That's
thinking.
what's so hard. So give me Marco Tulio for this one. I think
Wow.
because I'm not a fan of it because I like somebody else more, but I think I need a win where I need a win.
Yeah.
And to have 8 fighters already, like I think I'm going to be bouncing around 500 for this first one. So I need a win to start off, and then I can build off of it. So it's not great, but I can get Marco now.
I like the way you're thinking, but it's clear why he's always using the maximum drops. Because holy shit, I agree with you though. I think when it comes to prospects, you would argue Nurullo's the better prospect. But when
Oh
it
hell
comes to
yeah!
divisions, Marco Tulio is going to get a lot easier wins. So I like it. I
Hmm.
like the way you're thinking, even though sometimes the trained eye tells you a little bit other things. But Sean, this is a fucking blast, man. It feels good to be back for 2025, back and bigger than ever. And obviously, next week, we're only going to continue to grow. But just don't forget, we may grow and we may show, but we going to melt in your mouth, girl, and not in your hands. We'll see you all next week for an awesome pay per view edition of the Sideline Guys. And until then, peace.